Every major video game announcement event has now concluded, and we have a very good look at what the rest of 2024 is going to look like. Josh Brown, are you excited?
It's absolutely tasty. I cannot wait to gobble all of this up, Scott. It is a good year for video game releases.
I'm Scott Tailford.
I'm Josh Brown.
And these are the 10 most anticipated video games still to come in 2024.
Number 10, Avowed. Scott, Obsidian is on something of a run, I think, at this moment in time. Obviously, they've always created really great games. I mean, Fallout New Vegas, arguably the greatest game of all time. But then the Outer Worlds put them back on the map at a time when Bethesda, in particular, was on something of a downturn. And since then, Avowed has been announced as an Xbox exclusive, which for a while sort of looked like it was being positioned as an Elder Scrolls killer, which made it hilarious when Microsoft bought Bethesda as well and now have Avowed and the Elder Scrolls. However, it's been a little while since they actually released the Outer Worlds, and we have been eagerly awaiting this follow-up, and I think from the trailers released so far, it looks incredibly tasty. In terms of combat, I think it might look like it plays the best an Obsidian game ever has, with the interplay of magic as well as melee weapons and ranged attacks. I think the world that they have concocted looks absolutely beautiful. I think it's interesting that they're continuing the Outer Worlds' approach of not creating one massive open world, but instead focusing on a bunch of smaller yet still open areas. I just really hope, if I had one major issue with the Outer Worlds, it's that as an RPG, I don't think it hit the heights of Obsidian's older titles. So this time around with Avowed, I want consequences to matter, I want there to be interesting decisions, and I want there to be a solid character creator. But otherwise, I have no reason to doubt Obsidian, Scott. I think they're one of the best in the game, and I just hope this is a big win.
I kind of feel like they're shooting right down the lane with this. Like, it's the most straightforward thing they could be doing. It's like, hey, by the way, we can do this as well. Like, you think of Bethesda, you think of some of their biggest successes or the things that people associate with Bethesda that were actually Obsidian, that being New Vegas, and then them just swooping in now going like, we can do this. We can actually get there ahead of Elder Scrolls 6 and do it way better than Bethesda ever could. And like you said, they're under the same umbrella these days, so that rivalry isn't necessarily there anymore. But you can look into the history of Obsidian versus Bethesda, things to do with certain bonuses that they should have got after New Vegas came out. And I wonder how much there is going to be that ongoing conversation of actually Obsidian are the better studio or the better approach to an RPG. Hopefully it all pays off. Number 9, The Legend of Zelda, Echoes of Wisdom. My God, Josh, they're doing it. They're actually doing a Zelda game. It's taken them quite a while. However, I know the hardcore fans down there are telling me that there was a Zelda game back on the CDI. I know, but 3 people played it and it was bad. And I know you can play as Zelda in various other games like Hyrule Warriors, but we all know what I'm getting at. This is a Zelda-fronted Legend of Zelda game with an iconic new power set. I love the idea of Nintendo actually taking a minute to give a character that hasn't formerly been playable in many titles a signature set of abilities. I wish they did that more with Princess Peach. In her game, she pretty much just does what Kirby does. Just wears what something else, she doesn't eat people, but just wears what other people are wearing and gains their powers. I love that in this case, Zelda's thing is to create echoes of objects and then manifest them in the world. She can even recruit other creatures and make them fight on her side, or you can just throw tables at people to get through the whole world. It looks effing awesome, to be honest.
It's hilarious because a few months ago, we did a podcast over on the What Culture Gaming podcast channel, which you can find on all audio platforms, where you manifested this into existence. And you were even talking about if they did it, what power set would they give Zelda? And honestly, I was kind of blown away by the presentation. And as you know, it takes a lot for me to get blown away by a Nintendo product, but I love that idea of experimentation, which seems to be at the heart of the entire Zelda series right now, whether it's Breath of the Wild or the creation mechanics in Tears of the Kingdom. Here, that ability to create memories of items and objects in the world and then use them to solve puzzles or get through combat encounters, that is so cool. I love that level of inventiveness, and any game that gives you a toolbox like that always results in just amazing moments of emergent gameplay, and that's what I want more of.
They have a whole thing in here as well where you can copy elements. They show a bit where Zelda is stacking water to then swim up a mountainside. I'm like, the best thing in the most recent Zelda games, obviously Tears of the Kingdom, or like any game that has this emergent style or whatever, is how the hell do the developers still box you in? How do you have progression when you can just stack up a ton of beds and climb over the wall you're not supposed to go over, without resorting to invisible walls? That's the real challenge of something like this. And I think of all the different developers, Nintendo can obviously pull it off. I wasn't expecting this at all. I don't think a lot of people were. And the fact that it's coming this year, the fact that we are getting another top-down old-school Zelda before the end of the Switch is phenomenal. I still hope that the ongoing rumors about them remaking the Oracle's games are true, but I love that the Nintendo Switch started with Zelda and Mario, and we're ending with Zelda and Mario, which might be a slight spoiler as what I'm going to talk about when I get my next entry, but we'll get there.
Number 8, Silent Hill 2. Scott, I know not everybody in this room or in the comments is going to be as excited and think of Silent Hill 2 as one of the most anticipated games of the year, because there has been a lot of back and forth on whether developers Bloober Team are the right people for the job, whether what they've showed off so far in terms of cinematics and gameplay looks to be doing the Silent Hill franchise justice. But what can I say? I am a mark through and through for this franchise, and Silent Hill 2 was one of my most favorite games ever made, so to see it back in any form, that's always going to hit the most anticipated side of my brain, because no matter how this thing shakes out, it's going to be interesting. Whether they managed to pull off the impossible and do the original justice in terms of its characters, in terms of its still unbeaten atmosphere and story and horror design, or whether they completely botch it up and deliver a mess, it's going to be fascinating to pick apart, because there is so much riding on it, I think, not just in terms of Konami and Silent Hill, but also PlayStation. They've bet big with second-party relationships this year, which have so far been very fruitful. We've gotten The Rise of the Ronin, we've gotten Stellar Blade, we've gotten Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, we've gotten Helldivers 2, all of these great games, and the one that is outstanding for the rest of the year is Silent Hill 2. So this is a major PS5 exclusive. It's the big return for this franchise. It's a huge undertaking. So I cannot wait to finally have it in my hands after what feels like a wait that has lasted forever.
I do need to know what they've done. I do need to know what state this thing's in. I kind of just want the original version of Silent Hill 2 available as well, for more direct comparisons or just for archive's sake or whatever. But yeah, this is the biggest thing in Bloomberg's history. This feels like a big talking point already, and I'm curious what the launch day chatter is going to be. They'll either have nailed it, or they'll have done a satisfactory enough job, or it's only going to light the touch paper on, oh my god, they've ruined one of the most beloved games of all time. Although you could argue that we're kind of already there based on whoever you talk to. Number 7, Assassin's Creed Shadows. The most excited we've been for an Assassin's Creed in a long time.
I genuinely hate myself at how excited I am for this game. I
thought you was gonna
can't
stop
believe
there.
it. Oh, well, you could just
hate
also...
myself.
You could just stop the sentence there
Assassin's
as well.
Creed does that to a man.
If we're trying to keep it on topic for this, then yeah, I'll refer to Assassin's Creed Shadows. Scott, the gameplay trailer on this absolutely sold me in a way I could not believe, because coming off the CG trailer, as you know, I've kind of had my fill of feudal Japan settings, and I thought it's taken this team so long to do such a sought-after Assassin's Creed game set in this period that I wondered if they missed the boat. However, the changes that have been made to gameplay and giving us 2 distinct characters, one based around stealth, one based around kicking people in the head and throwing them through walls, that is speaking my language. The even subtle changes, like the closer camera, puts me into the action that little bit more. I think the animations that have been on show have been way better and more sophisticated than what we've seen in previous Assassin's Creed titles, and truthfully, this is the first next-gen looking game from Ubisoft, not just Assassin's Creed game, that I think we've seen until this point. I know Valhalla was pretty, I know Avatar was a looker as well, but I just look at this and think, okay, that's the next generation of Assassin's Creed, and I'm willing to give it a shot. not.
They need to nail this. Like, this is something that people have been asking for since the end of the original Assassin's Creed. I feel like Japan was the one setting everyone just kept going back to, even though AC as a franchise has traveled the world every single time when there's an E3 around the corner or a Jeff Key 3 or whatever. It's always like, but is it Assassin's Creed in Japan? And now we're finally getting there. And they've got, Ubisoft have apparently got the majority of their teams working on it. They've got this grand vision for it. It's a very painterly version of Assassin's Creed, of feudal Japan overall. And you do have these two different approaches to gameplay. You've got Yasuke being super melee based. You've got Naoe being more stealth focused. I hope that this weirdly leads to a new Splinter Cell or a new stealth revival inside Ubisoft, and maybe you get to an Assassin's Creed game that is entirely stealth focused. The Yasuke stuff looks fun, but I'm there to be an assassin. I'm there to do really cool Tenchu style stealth kills, and I want to do things like that. And I hope that they make a point of looking at the player data, seeing which people gravitate towards. And as I say that, I kind of feel like most people will gravitate towards the melee stuff because the Yasuke gameplay looks so ridiculous and over the top, and kicking a dude through an entire building to kill him is just going to be something we're all going to do. But I do wonder about what this means for something like a Splinter Cell, or what it means for something like the core identity of Assassin's Creed, and what that's like going forward. Ultimately, it's just something we've been waiting for just shy of 17 years.
It's, most of my adult life, Scott, has been spent waiting for this game, but just before I kind of finish off and steal your thunder from having the final word there, what I love about Assassin's Creed Shadows, at least on paper, is that it is introducing a lot of interesting mechanics to the series. We don't just have, like the basic distinction between stealth and melee that we've had many times in many games before, but I like the idea of the world that they're creating impacting the gameplay as well. Seasons changing how environments not only look, but how you move through them and can use stealth. Even just the idea of being able to go prone and hide yourself in mud, or get underwater and still breathe through a bamboo shoot while you're approaching enemies. Stuff like that, where it feels like the environment is more dynamic. That's what I've been looking for a while, and I hope that really shakes up the gameplay.
Yeah, man, the physics side of it's awesome. Like, to go on the other side of that, the Yasuke stuff, if you're swinging a giant club through a dude, you'll take out a whole basket of fruit along the way or whatever. Just small, those kind of things are quality of life improvements in regards to the physics stuff, but then you do have a physics-based swinging mechanic in there, and just a variety of stealth kills that you can do. I hope they pull it off. Assassin's Creed, weirdly, is a promise of an idea that I would argue they've not been able to capitalize on since AC Brotherhood. Like, they've been chasing various amounts of action focus for the last, decade plus, and now we've got a game that's going to do both flavors that they've, tried across the last, like I said, 17 odd years, and hopefully it actually finally comes together and feels like the complete package.
Number 6, Stalker 2. Stalker 2 is a game that has been talked about literally for about 14 years, and maybe even longer at this point. And to get the first look at real gameplay and an announcement that it's coming out so soon at the end of September was genuinely my favorite gaming moment of the year so far in terms of announcements or teasers or whatnot. When they showed that at the Xbox Showcase, Scott, this game immediately became my personal most anticipated game of 2024 because we talk a lot about art direction on this channel, and there's something about the atmosphere of Stalker 2 and what they've shown so far, and of course, the previous Stalker games, that this is definitely, continuing in the spirit of, that I just absolutely adore. The idea of being this character who is going into this, what they call an exclusion zone, that has been mutated by this different sort of radiation phenomena and whatnot, and going into the unknown, essentially, with this kind of old-timey weaponry. You've got like a military, almost a mil-sim approach to the weapons, and a sense of realism that is juxtaposed with the more sci-fi or fantastical elements of what's actually in the zone. And I love that distinction. I guess a lot of people would compare it to something like the Metro series, which does something kind of similar, where you have that kind of gray industrial setting and environment juxtaposed with kind of like these mutated beasties on the top, and the constant sense of pressure and intensity that comes with just trying to survive in this world. I can't wait to get a taste of how this plays, and the fact that it is coming sooner rather than later is such a huge surprise for me.
Man. I think that I'm curious on the gameplay side whether they do things that are more Metro adjacent, and they could be in Stalker 1 for all I know. I apologize for not having played the original game, but I have played a lot of Metro. In terms of hitting a button to wipe your visor, or the idea that like a gun could jam, things that Far Cry 2 was doing back in the day, to really hammer home that you're just making it through style of gameplay. Because obviously those things go up against the idea of just player happiness, or like if the gun jams at the wrong moment, you die, you go back to the last checkpoint. But I do think those things are worth exploring, and something like Stalker 2, from the footage that they've shown, does look extremely gritty and visceral, and just like it is a very specific headspace that we don't really see that much. Like Metro kind of was the last time that was done, and Last Light was 4 years ago or something?
Yeah, maybe even longer, you
know.
Oh, my
God.
Oh, wow.
Horrible.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Like, the entire series has a survival horror style vibe to it, that kind of constant scrapping around for resources, feeling like every bullet sort of counts. And I love, you know me, I love that out of games in every form. One of my favorite titles last year was Amnesia: The Bunker, which just puts you in a World War I bunker with a monster and about 5 bullets and says, there you go. Anything that kind of nails that vibe of just like intensity, I am here for, and I hope this is as good as my brain is imagining it to be.
Number 5, Mario and Luigi Brothership. Josh Brown, are you excited?
Left turn, Scott Tilford from Stalker 2. Tell me more about Brothership.
Well, we talked about doing this most anticipated list a few weeks back, and I said, wait, just give me a minute, let me see what's arriving on the Nintendo Direct. And then I didn't want to then make my 5 picks just everything that was at the Nintendo Direct. I can't have Metro Prime 4 because that's gonna be out in 2025. But Mario and Luigi, I mean, as a franchise, there hasn't been a new installment in years, but the general approach is that it's a turn-based RPG, but with really cool sort of rhythmic button presses, do more damage in combat, more attacks. It's the same as the Paper Mario stuff. You're doing more damage, more effects. You're guarding against attacks by hitting buttons on time, but it's the presentation of the whole thing. The art style here is absolutely gorgeous. There's a bit of the stretch and snap, I think it's called, style that Cuphead did. And whatever you call that thing, the rubber hose style animation.
Oh,
then you have a whole thing. I think it's called stretch and snap. I'm doing weird movements with my hands, but I think you know what I mean. In the gameplay that they showed for Brothership, you can see that in certain ways that Mario and Luigi do jumps, or they interact with each other, the different animations that they share when they do combined attacks in combat. It just looks very delightful. I'm not going to spend too long on it because I feel like a lot of people know what this game is. The Mario and Luigi series, like I said, is quite sparsely handled, but from what they're going for, other than the Brothership itself being a way of getting around the actual scale of the game looking somewhat bigger, using a literal Brothership to get from island to island, the brothers shooting themselves out of a cannon to get around, it's just pure joy, to be honest, and I think it looks beautiful.
What shocked me about this game, Scott, was when you told me it was happening, I was shocked and appalled that Luigi wasn't in every Mario game anywhere. He's that guy's brother.
Yeah.
He's got to be looking out for him. What do you mean he's not included in the mainline games? Luigi is so cool.
I don't think that's what Luigi is, but I know that Luigi does have a massive fan base. I'm not in that fan base. Luigi sucks.
Number 4, Dragon Age 4. The Veil Guard. I don't even know if it has that number in the title anymore, Scott, but I'm going to go with it anyway because I like that it's 4 and 4.
Yes.
The point of this entry is this is another game that I didn't expect to be this hype on, but after seeing specifically the gameplay trailer, because I will admit that the CG reveal trailer, or I guess re-reveal trailer of The Veil Guard didn't do much for me, but I am now fully convinced after seeing the gameplay because I love the world that seems to have been constructed in its sort of, it's like neon fantasy almost, like kind of like they're incorporating elements of cyberpunk into a classic fantasy landscape, which I can really get behind, you know, purples and pinks and these kind of colors that you wouldn't mainly associate with the green vibrancy and forestry of a fantasy game. However, this is BioWare, and I've just been waiting for them to return for so many years with a proper RPG, and that seems like what we're going to get here. They have already talked up the character customization, the ability to craft a history for that character, the game's connections to the previous title, Inquisition, and how that thing ended, the companions that you'll meet along the way, the romances that you'll have, and it's just been so long since I've been able to indulge in that kind of gameplay in a BioWare game.
Yes.
And as you know, I am so into fantasy RPGs at the moment in a way I have never been. After playing stuff like Dragon's Dogma 2 and Baldur's Gate 3, I am so ready for another one of these to blow my mind, and this looks different enough while still being informed by the great decisions those games made, that I just want it to be the full package. I do concede that BioWare has so much to prove. EA generally has so much to prove. I'm never going to say go out and pre-order this thing, because who knows, it could be another Mass Effect 3, it could be another Mass Effect Andromeda, it could be another Anthem, but I really hope it isn't. And from the small smattering in fact of footage that we've seen, I am wanting to pre-order, Scott.
Just call me Prappa the Rapper. I want to believe. I just want to believe in BioWare. I want to believe in Dragon Age. I want to believe that they can do it again. I know that so many veteran staff members of BioWare have left. I know that they're coming off that horrible run, Anthem, Mass Effect Andromeda, etc. But I just want to believe they've done it. The thing is, they spent so long revealing a new Dragon Age. I know that it was initially mentioned as Dragon Age Dreadwolf, which they should have just kept that name. That's so much better than Veilguard. But then when they did the Heroes trailer, I think it was called, was the one that everybody downvoted and hated, and then that kind of led people onto a bit of a more negative view of the gameplay and the idea that it's going to be too much action focused and too much like Mass Effect and not enough like Dragon Age. We'll see what it's like at launch. They almost damn near killed it again. Like, they took that long to put the worst foot forward after having a bit of more positive reception in regards to the Dreadwolf stuff and the tease of what's going to happen with Solus as a character. I just feel like I'm back in that zone of like, well, I guess I'll just wait and see, because I want to believe. But then you look into some of the making of stuff and the reality of it being a live service game at some point in development. There are reports of that it was then gutted and overhauled and put back into single player. And then you look at some of the decisions that you're making on mission, and they're quite binary. It's like, do you want to do this or this? In reality, if we start talking when we play through it, if I go one way and you go the other, do they just come back around again? Like, how meaningful are those decisions? I do appreciate how much BioWare social media have been getting out there and just showing people the progression trees, the character building aspects and all that kind of stuff, the literal stats side of it. Look how meaty this thing is. Again, I want to believe. I'm not gonna believe it until I see it or play it. But BioWare making a Dragon Age game in 2024, hopefully. Number 3, Fantasian Neo Dimension.
What is this?
I'd love to just cut the entry there. But Fantasian Neo Dimension is the return of Hironobu Sakaguchi, the creator of Final Fantasy, returning to Square Enix to put his newest game, or at least one of the games that he was associated with across the last few years, on a console. He put the damn thing out on mobile. No one played it. No one played. I mean, I get the people probably did play. I didn't play it. So it's finally going to be on Switch, and I'm just excited about that. They showed it off at the most recent Nintendo Direct. It's literally just the fact that you have the creator of Final Fantasy coming back to a console. Square Enix have been getting out there on social media saying, welcome back, Hironobu Sakaguchi. Sakaguchi himself seems to be quite stoked that he's reuniting with Square and putting out a new turn-based RPG. And in terms of the gameplay, standard stuff, turn-based RPG, etc. However, there are a couple of really, really cool things here. One, the levels are all handmade. They're all literally handmade dioramas that have then been scanned in and put into the game, which is so sick.
I love that.
Such a cool thing. Takes care of the graphical fidelity side of it. Like, obviously the detail is there because they've literally been made. Took a while in development, but it does pay off. Like, the look of this game is sick. Also, when it comes to turn-based stuff, there are various things that you can do in terms of when you aim at enemies, you can chain different attacks together to make the most of the positioning that you've got. But also, it has a whole mechanic where if you don't want to do the fight in the moment, you can banish an enemy to a dungeon and stock them all up and then do a combat dungeon dynamically across the level whenever you want to. Just things that are just cool iterations or innovations on a turn-based genre that has been around for so long, like since Sakaguchi himself, helped propel it into the mainstream. And so I'm just excited to see what other new ideas are in there, or just to get hands-on with a new vision from that dude. Again, I get it, it's on iOS, but I ain't even got an iPhone, so I'm just excited in that regard.
Number 2, Call of Duty Black Ops 6. I'm sorry to disappoint everyone watching this, but I have no cool under-the-radar pick for this list. They're all biggies, they're all mainstream. What can I say? This is definitely the year, and I hesitate to repeat myself, where I have been blown away by just regular sequels that we would expect to see that look way better than I ever expected them to. And Black Ops 6 is another one of those, because Black Ops and Treyarch games, while I appreciate them, I've always been an Infinity Ward guy, I have been a Modern Warfare guy, and some elements of Treyarch's titles have never vibed with me personally on the long term. I like a lot of their games, but they just don't hook me in. However, when I first set eyes on Black Ops 6's gameplay, it is bringing enough iteration to the table to get me suddenly excited about Call of Duty again. I do think that the omnidirectional movement, which allows you to sprint and strafe and dive in way more diverse ways than you ever could, is going to shake up the core gunplay in a big way. And I can't wait to see how that plays, because as you are too, Scott, we are big fans of Max Payne 3,
yes,
which does a similar thing in third person. So if you can implement that in first person COD style gunfights, that sounds incredible. I like the setting that they picked, you know, going to the 90s and the Gulf War. That's something that I'm entirely unfamiliar with, but it feels distinct enough. It feels like there's a real, you know, art direction focus behind the weapons that are being included, the locations, and the overall aesthetic that feels more confident than I've seen Treyarch in some time. And generally speaking, I'm just excited for this to be the first Call of Duty game that's had a development cycle that's been unaffected by kind of Activision getting their mitts in and taking people off the project and putting people on, and having Treyarch come in and salvage another game. They've had 4 years, I think, to make Black Ops 6, and so far you can see that reflected in the quality and the ways that they're pushing the mechanics forward. And it's a breath of fresh air after Modern Warfare 3 last year, which I concede the team almost certainly did the best that they could have done with that game, but that was easily, for me, the laziest Call of Duty ever made. That is an official sequel, and Black Ops 6 looks like the antithesis of that, and I'm excited for Call of Duty to have that bit of energy again.
Yeah, man, if you just let developers do the thing that they spent their life perfecting, you'll get good video games. You'll get things that are actually instilled with soul and purpose, and not just trying to make the next installment of a production line. Yeah, Black Ops 6 looking extremely promising. I feel like the last few CODs have been a bit here and there. The reality of just the production is likely the reason, but I've dropped off. I used to keep up with it. I didn't buy Modern Warfare 3, but I think the likes of Black Ops Cold War or Vanguard were just kind of, it was another Call of Duty. This feels a little bit more like the event that Call of Duty usually is, and I like them shaking up the gameplay. I can't wait to see how people react to that. There'll be the whole conversation, oh my god, it affects the spawns, it affects everything else. There'll be that standard launch day weekend stuff, but I kind of secretly love those conversations, and I love launch weekend energy when it comes to Call of Duty. And the fact that you can sprint sideways or sprint backwards or whatever it is, or dive to prone and shoot from there. I'm just excited to see how it feels overall. I feel like Call of Duty this many years in could do with a shakeup, and even something like being able to dive and shoot from prone or whatever it is, it's enough for a base level change without too much going out the window. So I'm curious. I'm cautiously optimistic.
Absolutely, I think you're spot on there. You know, Call of Duty will continue to sell, but I do think the titles need something to make a bigger impact, because the lifespan of Call of Duty games now is so much longer than it used to be. You know, now I don't think a new set of weapons and a new set of maps really incentivize people to jump into a brand new game, because you get new weapons and you get new maps over the course of the seasons for last year's title. So you need something new, something exciting, some shake-up that gets people back in, and I do think so far Black Ops 6 has that.
Yeah. Number 1, Astro Bot! Is there any other game needed for the rest of the year, Josh Brown? Astro Bot.
Do you want me to answer that honestly?
No, I don't. Astro Bot is actually the phenomenal game that I'm going to talk about. 3D platformers are back. Woo! What are you going to say?
Nothing at all. I love Astro Bot. He's amazing. This game is getting such positive buzz, and I love to see it already doing well before it's even out. The Astro Bot games have low-key been some of the best PlayStation titles that you can play across the past few years. Even something like Astro's Playroom, which is free and you can download on your PlayStation 5 as soon as you get it, is a great showcase for the console. It shows so much personality through Astro Bot himself, and I would be remiss if I did not mention Astro Bot's adventures and humble beginnings on the PSVR, which were absolutely goated and gives me nothing but confidence for this game, but I know you are absolutely buzzing for it, so tell me more.
I miss 3D platformers. I miss the idea of mascot platformers. I love how well Astro plays, the 2020 game, and I think that it's about time Sony had something a bit more charming or a bit more lovable associated with them on a console identity level. And I absolutely loved bringing together all the various parts of PlayStation history in the 2020 game. And I know that they've patched the game now. You can go back and you can literally visit the dev room inside 2020's Astro Bot as they cook up the next installment. It's lovable. It's awesome. I get that some people are a bit put off by cutesy video games, whatever they want, other things. I just think that this thing plays so well. And like I said, it's been so long since there's been a mascot platformer. Like, you had remakes with Spyro and Crash, but Sony have never had something as big as a Mario. And it's not like Astro is going to get all the way there, but he's already being mentioned in those spaces. Like the idea that Sony finally has something adjacent to a Mario or an instant platformer that a new generation of players can gravitate towards.
Come on, they had a new Mario. Knack's right there.
Who's that? There were various parts of the office that we gobbled up and stitched together. That's not a lovable thing at all. But yeah, I feel like the overall way that Astro Bot is demoing itself is just perfectly primed to be a mix of nostalgia in terms of the gameplay mechanics that you remember from when you were a kid versus, or alongside, all the innovations that the genre has made and a lot of the ground that has been missed out on because we didn't get a steady cadence of 3D platformers. It is only something like a ukulele or whatever. But you look at the positive reception to the likes of Daxter making its way from PSP to PS5 to notice how hungry people are for such a simplistic genre and how easy it is to do that stuff right. So in terms of raw gameplay, I can't wait to literally play this. The hands-on stuff that's come out so far is that every single level has its own gimmick. Some of them being based around magnetism, gathering up different items so you can make a giant metal ball and throw it around. I just want to do that, Josh.
100%. Look, I mean, I don't think there is a game on this list that is as sure of a bet than this. We know from the games that the team has made before, the previous Astro Bot games, that they have this gameplay formula down to a T. And hopefully with this being Astro's first big console kind of game, literally. Extravaganza, they can blow that out to epic proportions and deliver something excellent. But to me, it is just what we have been wanting for years, and that's PlayStation celebrating its own library in history. They don't do that nearly as much as they should with the back catalog, the immense back catalog that they had. So to see them embrace all of the characters from all of across their biggest franchises to their smallest franchises and put them in a game like this, it makes it so lovable. It has so much personality, and yeah, it really is. I know I joked about Knack there, but it is the difference between those two games. Absolutely, like Knack doesn't have that personality, doesn't have that charm. Astro Bot has it in spades.
Yeah, man, I can't wait to see how the rest of the year feels. All of these games have really good reputations around them already. It's going to be a lovely rest of the year.